What would you say if I told you there is a whole generation putting their life at risk, even to the point of being killed because of misinformation? Did you know that you or someone you know is potentially being deceived to death? I'm Adrienne Bankert, and in this episode of One Nation Under God, we are discussing a crisis. Not sensationalized. This is real, but maybe not the crisis you would think. We all need to wake up. There is a tragedy happening in our country that touches all of us. Chances are you know someone who self-diagnoses. Now, according to various medical journals, as many as 70% of adults in the United States use online websites to diagnose their symptoms and research medicine to treat those symptoms without seeing an actual doctor. There's no way to fully know that exact number. But fast forward to right now, your children, being just like you, are self-diagnosing too. The Hill, just out with the results of the latest poll by EdWeek Research Center, finds that more than half of students use social media to self-diagnose their mental health symptoms with online searches and through listening to influencers who they perceive as experts. And most teachers say that they've witnessed teens diagnosing their classmates as well. They're being killed by drugs that they don't even know they're actually ingesting.
Right. And again, it's back to the innocence or ignorance of a youth, really, to go, oh, I can buy everything online. That's their culture. So if they see what these pills, these counterfeit pills, even the scientists in our crime lab cannot tell the difference between a real and fake.
Maybe you or your child self-diagnoses for anxiety and sees that you can treat that with the drug Xanax, and yet don't want to spend the money for a pharmacy or doctor's visit. Perhaps you don't have health insurance, so you go online to find the meds, again, without a formal diagnosis. Instead of a prescription, you get poison. A local pastor in Sacramento found out this was happening more frequently, and along with other dangers linked to fentanyl, she decided to do something about it.
I think most people think, like I did, this doesn't impact me. We just had someone recently that we were sharing about the community meeting coming up, and they said, I'm bringing my whole family to this. They just had a niece who literally 8 days earlier had died of a fentanyl overdose, and it wasn't, again, they didn't realize they were taking fentanyl.
They were actually going to take something they thought was real medication.
And as a result, they're not here today.
Ugh.
I actually have someone in our congregation who lost a granddaughter a year ago, and their first experience with fentanyl was death.
Family Community Church in North Highlands, California is hosting To Save a Life. It will be on April 18th, 7 p.m. Pacific time. We have included a QR code on the lower part of your screen, so you can scan that with your phone and register for their event for free. The presentation will be delivered by the founder of a group called Arrive Alive, Angela Webb, whose presentations are changing lives all around the state of California. And following an education you didn't even know you needed, you will get free Narcan. Pastor Marie Harrell now carries Narcan and is encouraging members of her church to carry Narcan at all times. You have it in your purse.
Yeah, and I have one in my car.
And so you have two.
Mm-hmm. And one at the office.
Oh, you have them everywhere.
Yes. And so, just with the different areas I'm involved in, I've made sure our staff knows about it, but that also has access to it. Again, not just know it as a news story, not just know it as an issue that we're facing as a nation, but see how I can do something in my circle, how I can do something in my part of the world.
Can you just talk about how you used to think about fentanyl and Narcan, if you even knew what Narcan was?
Well, I think, of course, when you hear fentanyl, it's something that's regularly in the news media or whatever, and you're like, okay, fentanyl, where we've become a little bit desensitized to it. I'm like, I don't do fentanyl, so okay, cool. But I was actually sitting in a community meeting, and we had a police officer there, and so they said, you all should have Narcan with you. It should be in your purse, it should be in your car. And I thought, I'm sure that's great for whoever needs it. Then it came up again, but the more that I heard the stories, it's impacting people who don't think it will impact them, which means, A, it could impact me. And one of the statements that was made that really caught my attention, they said, if you're ever with kids or around kids or have your own children, you should have Narcan with you. And I thought, what in the world? And so as the stories went on of, children that pick up gummy bears that have fentanyl in them and share them with someone at school, or people even who get medicine from someone and think they're taking one thing, but there's fentanyl in it. And a lot of times, we think everything comes from the pharmacy. And so as I understood that a little bit better and the importance of how it was not just impacting someone who had maybe, let's say, a challenge with addiction or drugs, but it was bigger than that. It was impacting children. It was impacting, as I heard the stories, sometimes the dogs that would go in and smell, they had a Narcan a dog that smelled of.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Of course, then all these questions come up. If I see someone that needs this and do it, what's it going to cause? What's the effect? Can I overdo it? And so recognizing that it can only help people, it can't hurt them. And it became a passion for me not to just know it myself, but to let other people know it. And so as a result, I wanted to make sure our church community, but not just our church community, our community at large, was aware of it.
Today, Narcan is more readily available in cities all over the U.S. Hundreds of vending machines have been set up dispensing free Narcan, which is reported to be as simple and harmless to administer as the mist you spray in your nose for seasonal allergies.
It's not a complicated nasal spray to do. Narcan is, again, over-the-counter medication. You do not need a prescription. But when the opioid or the fentanyl attaches to the receptor in the brain, so you basically go from 10 breaths to 8 to 6, and you just stop breathing. So what happens is the medication gets up and it releases the opioid from the receptor in the brain. As soon as your heart starts beating again, it will reattach. And depending on how much fentanyl is in your system will determine how much Narcan is needed to get it out. So it only is active for maybe 30 to 90 minutes. That's why it's so important to get first responders on scene as soon as you can. We're going to be giving a free training, and I am a distributor, so I'll be giving away cases at our big community event, but that could be the Hail Mary that saves that person's life until first responders show up.
The reason why I know about this conversation is because Pastor Marie Harrell said, I found out I need to have Narcan and everybody needs to have Narcan on them. And I said, why? Why do I need Narcan? I'm not around people who are overdosing on drugs. So speak to those watching right now. Why does everybody need Narcan?
Why not? Should everyone try to save a life if they have an opportunity to? At the end of the day, if you see someone, California has the Good Samaritan law. You cannot be held civilly liable for a person's death if you made an attempt in good faith to save their life. You're protected. Why wouldn't you want to save somebody's life if you had an opportunity to? Think bigger than what about me? Think bigger, that we have youth, we have a community, we have generation that is literally being deceived to death and being killed for greed, for the hopes that they can just mix enough to keep them alive and get them a customer for life. That is what they want. A mother came up to me and said, please give the signs and symptoms of what a fentanyl or an opioid overdose looks like to these students. Because if my son's friends would have known, maybe they could have saved his life instead of just had him die right at their feet. That is empowering information.
And for the youngest, unknowingly putting things in their mouth or sadly victims of abuse, the journal Pediatrics reports that fentanyl poisoning now makes up over half of fatal poisonings of children. The Yale School of Medicine reports that fentanyl-related deaths of kids are up 3,000% over the past decade.
I was just recently with a mom, and she's like, we were somewhere, and my child picked up something off the ground and was going to eat it. And I was like, what are you doing? And in their mind, they're like, I didn't even think I'd have to, this was not like a 2-year-old. They were like, I didn't think I'd have to say this to my child. But they're thinking, oh, it's just food, but maybe it's not. But I will tell you, this person would have never thought that way had we not had the conversation about fentanyl and Narcan.
Look at the 2 pre-med students from University of Ohio. They went and split an Adderall pill, what they bought online to help during testing, and there was enough fentanyl to kill 5 people in that one pill that they split. I mean, this is, or the young man that was going to play in a football game for homecoming, scouts were coming out and he got hurt. So he went online and he bought a Percocet because he heard it was a pain reliever. This is the poisoning component. There was a 10-month-old at a park that picked up something at a park and she went down. Thank goodness the babysitter had Narcan in her backpack, and it was fentanyl overdose, a 10-month-old. This drug is not discriminating. It doesn't care your age, your race, your creed, it does not matter. And the sad thing is if you get hooked and the amount does not kill you, because 2 milligrams could be a lethal dose. That's 3 grains of salt. If you get hooked and don't die, you want more, so you have to build a tolerance to this. So you keep increasing your desire and your supply. So, and the sad thing is, I heard this just last week, less than 2% of the people that get on fentanyl will recover if they become an addict.
So that means the rest of the people just keep asking for a high until they die? This is not like the drug war of the 80s or 90s at all. There's a new kind of customer, new victims, and staggering access to what could poison you without you even knowing it. You said we're being deceived to death. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
We are experiencing a drug landscape that we have never seen before. With fentanyl now here locally and throughout the nation, it's being mixed in every drug category. So when people who do have substance use disorders are looking for a specific drug, it is not a pure form anymore because of fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times more powerful than heroin and 100 times more powerful than morphine. What my concern is, and where my heart's passion is to get to the youth who may be in that experimental phase of adolescence or something and might want to start off with a common prescription medication for what they think. But this is where it gets to that deception, is that there is no medication in these counterfeit pills. It is all fentanyl and filler. But what we're seeing is 22 youth each week in the United States are dying because of fentanyl.
And people are going online. I mean, you can Google, you can use TikTok apparently?
You can use TikTok, you can use Snapchat, Cash Apps, video games, any type. It's no longer running down a dark alley. It truly is home deliveries. Or let's meet up at the mall. And the DEA actually has this on their website at DEA/1pill. And it is an emoji code of all of the different types of drugs and how you can get it. For Snapchat, you just put in a couple of catchphrases or hashtags and menus will pop up. Just imagine going to the diner, they put a menu in front of you. Same goes with, you name a substance, it's at your fingertips. 1 sugar packet, 1 gram, if that was illicit fentanyl, could kill 500 people. And it's being put into all drug categories. I'm constantly updating myself, seeing what's the new trends, where we're seeing things come up. And 2 years ago, it wasn't in marijuana and it wasn't in vape pens. We are now starting to see it even included in that with some of the reports that are going on.
Fentanyl?
And edibles, yes.
In vape pens?
Yes.
How much of what we're hearing about fentanyl is misinformation, conspiracy, or just flat out misleading?
If you pull something up and it's an article from 2 years ago and that's what you're basing your knowledge on, you're incorrect. So that's why, as prevention experts, we are constantly looking up this information to make sure we know. You know, the powder form of fentanyl is the most dangerous because if it could get into a mucous membranes, eyes, nose, mouth, you too could go under, which some of the reports do have that listed. And that's why we make sure the teachers, when we do teacher assemblies and counselor assemblies, that they do not, if a student goes down, do not do mouth to mouth, because if it is fentanyl,
Wow.
you would then also go into an overdose.
So if you have a child collapse in your classroom and your first instinct, that CPR training kicks in, and you want to do chest compressions, mouth to mouth, you could end up exposing yourself
Correct.
to fentanyl if that's what they used, if they used the powder form?
Correct.
That's crazy.
And we've had schools here locally that have had Narcan students several times on campuses because of these counterfeit pills. The drug dealers are not just the ones online. They are using the mules of students.
What are you hearing from teenagers?
I'm hearing that there's still a stigma associated with any type of mental health. I'm also hearing that the youth are they're bearing a lot of weight from their parents because that they're stressed out. So why add another thing to the list that they need to worry about? So then you go into that whole self-diagnosing again, and not wanting to burden their parents with one more thing.
That's a shame, because I'm sure their parents would want to know.
We also know that 60% of youth today are struggling with a mental health issue. And rather than going to an adult or their parent or to the school counselor, they're self-diagnosing, finding out what medication is, and then going online to buy it. That is where we're seeing this ramp up of prescription medications counterfeit coming across and in our neighborhoods.
What about the privacy issue? Because I think a lot of people, they say, well, my child is due their privacy. They're a teenager, they're 16, they have a cell phone, I trust them.
Good for you. I am a mama bear, and not a lot of people are like that. My child knows I am her mom first and her friend second, and then when she's 18, we'll switch. But the point is I have a responsibility to protect my child through and through. Her privacy is very much respected. However, I pay for that phone. That's my property, and that's my child. And they don't know 10 steps in front of them because they are only 15 or 16. We have life experience. When we start seeing stuff online, this is gonna go down the wrong way. To empower the parents, and I think a lot of people don't realize, is that some phones you cannot break into, even with a warrant. So if something were to happen, whether your child intentionally or unintentionally had something that was laced with fentanyl, contained fentanyl, and died, and their phone was locked up, and you didn't have the passcode, they'd just be coded as another overdose instead of potentially a drug-induced homicide. If you could see, which I have many families that come out and speak, and some were able to open the phone and see that their child wanted a Percocet, and it wasn't a Percocet, it was a fentanyl. And then some that their kid's case went to cold case because they can't open the phone. Understanding there are apps out there that you can put on your phone that you don't have to feel like you're snooping through, that alert you if there's dangerous conversation or emojis or conversations happening. Download them.
There's a lot of people who would say that parents are becoming more of the public enemy and saying, kids can make their own decisions, the parents don't need to be involved.
I think we need to start empowering the parents again. Like, you are the parent, you are the parental figure here. There is the overdose that's happening, people that are intending to take fentanyl and looking for it. And then there's the poisoning aspect. So when we go for the prevention and awareness, we go through the prevention side or the poisoning side of fentanyl being laced in all the different drug categories. The other side is the overdose. There are a very great majority, I know in different towns, that if they have a substance use disorder, that's their drug of choice now. It's very, very inexpensive. If someone was to try to get off heroin, it's the worst substance to try to get off of. Fentanyl is 50 times worse than that.
So withdrawal from fentanyl is like hell. Do we know the stats for people who are going after what they think are legitimate pills? Or is that included?
That is included.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and the thing is, it's not slowing down.
No.
When the DEA put out the One Pill Can Kill campaign 2 years ago, it was 4 out of 10 pills. Last year, it was 6 out of 10 pills are lethal. As of October 2023, it's 7 out of 10 pills have a lethal dose of fentanyl in them.
What happens when someone takes fentanyl?
It's a suppressant. It's a respiratory suppressant. So everything slows down substantially. The thing is, it doesn't matter how long their high lasts. As soon as they come out, they start to detox. And as soon as that happens, they start to feel like they're dying from what their body does, the throwing up, the bodily functions, and things like that. So they seek to take more they call it getting well, is by taking more drugs so they don't feel like they're dying. So it's this vicious cycle that they don't want to go through the detox because it's so extremely painful. So they keep taking more and more and more.
You do these presentations all over the country, and you're going to be doing it right here at
Yes.
Family Community Church, and having members of the faith community, members of the law enforcement community, hopefully
Yes.
school children, hopefully parents. What are you going to say to get their attention and get them to wake up and realize, you know, it's not about just those who are seeking to get high on a street corner. This could be your kid, this could be your cousin, this could be your uncle.
Let's pull our head out of the sand and say it's not going to happen to my kid ever, and realize it very well could. So what can we do about it to protect our children, protect ourselves, and be an active agent in this community to save others? Specifically for Sacramento County, we've had 3 times as many fentanyl-related deaths than gun-related homicides. Every gun-related homicide, we have news, a report. But all of the fentanyl-related deaths, nothing, it's pushed under the rug.
As a child, did you see people saving lives?
I grew up with a very empowering family. My whole legacy is built around those in military, those in law enforcement, those in the church, and those as crisis responders. So I knew no other way. I then went in and started volunteering to be a crisis responder for youth. And after about 10 years of seeing the aftermath of bad decisions and being there to help support families, I said somebody's got to come in and bring dynamic prevention to get to the kids before these life-altering decisions are made. My mission is to empower them so that they can now go and share the message. I can't reach everybody, but if you get the message out to others and then have them be agents of change, that is what this is all about. I get the letters, handwritten letters from youth that said, you saved my life, and the information that you have given me, I have shared with others. Or the information you gave with me inspired me to start my own nonprofit organization. Then I've had this, last year was several that came across from teachers that said, this young man or this young woman was using, and because of your presentation, they went to their parents, they said they didn't want to die. They're in treatment and they're doing fantastic. That is what it is about.
As you start to have conversations and realize the impact, there's more people probably that are impacted by it than you realize, which then, how do I know that what I'm sharing with you today or someone else doesn't save a life that I'll never come in contact with? But yet we just had recently here locally a young person that, you know, in high school is no longer here today, and as a result there's several high schools now that are more aware because it touched someone in their age group.
Am I affected by a young person who dies in my community who I don't know? Am I affected? What would you say?
I don't know that I'm quoting exactly, but we're separated by like 5 people or something, you know, all of us. We don't know who's connected to who. And I also think many times, you know, we think it's the person across the block or whatever, but when anybody in our community is hurting, it really does affect the whole community.
I think sometimes you see in society where
Sure.
things are segmented and separated when that's not what a community is.
I think it takes all of us working together. The business owners that I'm working with now, we're all dealing with the same issues. We have the same people walking into our establishments. We have the same people walking into our parks, into our neighborhoods. So we have the park district involved. We have the police officers involved. We have churches, yes, involved, but we also have other community organizations, as well as the business leaders. We've already seen in our community as we are growing more together in this cohesive unit. Again, we don't all believe the same thing. We don't all think the same thing, and we don't all have the same goals, but we can have the goal of, hey, we want our community to be the best it can be. We want a place where people can live happy, and have a peaceful environment. We've seen great things in dealing with some of the, the homeless situations, but it's because we're coming together as a group and realizing we all have the same problems. So many times that's the problem with being in a silo, is you think you're the only one that's dealing with it. But not only do we find out we're all dealing with it, we've also been able to have the conversation, oh, this works great, this is effective, and it's not just, oh, let's get rid of everyone, but it's getting them what they need by still accomplishing what the community needs and not leaving anybody, without, but doing our best as working together to have everyone's needs met. It's so much more impactful when we can have the same voice, have the same objective, have the same goal, and work towards it. When people are in their homes and they're happy and they're healthy, whether they go to my church or not, it makes the community we live in better. And so anytime you make the things around you better, it doesn't just impact you. There's a ripple effect. And I think that that's not just in this area, but in any area of our lives. We have to realize that what we do has a ripple effect. When we can have a positive ripple effect, it touches more people than we may realize.
Out of all of the people that you spoke to last year, how many do you think were parents?
Maybe 400, 500.
Is this like a parenting crisis? Is it denial?
No, I think there's a couple of sides to this, truly. I think that parents themselves are stressed and have a lot going on. We have much better success when we do Zoom parent meetings for them. We record it, we send it out. I can see the views, and it's definitely much higher than a come out after work, before you make dinner, another thing for them to do. I also believe that they don't understand what's going on. I think they have become desensitized by hearing fentanyl across the border, fentanyl this, but they don't understand. This needs to be shouted from the mountaintops for our community to understand it's not a nationwide problem only. It's a community problem, but also provide them with hope. There is something that you can do. At the end of the day, you have just gained a wealth of knowledge about the topic. One, go share it. Go share it with someone. Go share it with an older generation that might be considering, I can't afford the medication, but I just saw something come up online. Let them know. Tell the children. Tell your parents.
Now, since I have these women with me, I wanted to approach the whole parenting element. We have moms and dads. You might be one who just don't know what to do. What do you talk to your kids about? Here's what Pastor Marie Harrell had to say. You are a very invested parent. I happen to know that. You have 3 young men in your life, 3 sons. What would your appeal be to parents in particular for why they should be at meetings like this and why they should be more engaged?
I'll say this, if you're not talking to your kids about it, someone is. Again, we assume that people aren't, or kids don't know about it. Your kids know more than you think they know, and they're hearing it from someone in their community, at their school. You don't know where. And as my children grew up, they're a little bit older now, but we didn't isolate them from everything. I also say I didn't just throw them out to the wolves, but we had places that we were. When things came up, we talked about it. It wasn't putting stigmas on things. It wasn't putting things in corners. It was having dialogue to say, well, why do people do this? Or why is it like that? But it wasn't like, why would you ask that? So I would encourage any parent to bring their child, and they might say, I don't know if this applies to them. Well, or you might think they're too young. Listen, some of the stories we have are grade schoolers that are getting things at school. They think they're sharing a snack, and it ends up a life-changing event, thinking they're sharing a snack. So from a parent perspective, yes, you need to be informed as a parent, but not only that, you should have your children there. And what will it do? I guarantee you kids love to talk. And they're talking to somebody. It's amazing what kids will say to you, right? Even if you don't know them. And if you go to that environment with them, I think that's the power of the parent, is not just sending them to a place. Again, in today's society, it's very easy. Oh, I'm gonna send them here, I'm gonna send them there, I'm gonna go do this while they do that. I always like to do things with my kids because of the conversation that it generated, that between us and the interaction it created, so that we could have those conversations. And sometimes they're awkward, let's be honest, as parents, to bring up. But if you get exposed to it with them, the conversation will come up, because the kid will ask you. They're gonna say, what did that mean? Why did they say that? Or my friend's been talking about that, because they're like, what? I didn't even know you had a friend that was dealing with that. But it would come up because you brought them. And then they would know, even as it came up, if it did come up in their life, Mom, when we were at this, remember they said that? This just happened. Well, why? Because you already had something to be that launching pad for a conversation. And I think one of the challenges, that we come up against today is that sometimes we don't have as much reality as we need, because we're trying to shelter or give space. And we don't have to create an argument, but I would say create the conversation. And again, it doesn't have to be the hammer over their head, look, you'll do what I say. No, it's create the conversation. And when you create the conversation, listen, all of us want relationship. They say right now one of the highest statistics in our nation from every age group. I just read something as I was driving past a billboard that said 1 in 3 children are going to claim to already have extreme anxiety. The loneliness factor of people from young to old. But why? It's because we've kind of eliminated all the human aspect of what we do. We've become very digital, which is a great tool, but it shouldn't replace that. Again, they're getting their information from somewhere. So how about have a dialogue of where and not have some of the surprises, or again, I'm not going to say there won't be any surprises, but at least you'll have a conversation maybe before it's farther down the road than you thought. Growing up with my own children, so to speak, and being in their lives, that it's amazing. The older they get the driver's license. They're like, yes, I don't have to do this anymore. Yes, they can take themselves. I always made time, and sometimes, some people are like, why are you doing that? Because it created moments of conversation and relationship. Sometimes, we make it all the emphasis to go to every party when they're in preschool and kindergarten, but they don't remember any of that. But they remember when you show up at their high school game or their production or those type of things. And so it's not me just coming with a lecture, but it's me creating a relationship. Sometimes you don't end up at many meals together, you're coming and going and doing those type of things, but creating those moments that are meaningful, creating moments that are just chill. That's when the greatest conversations happen. Some of my greatest conversations were in the pickup and drop off to school. And they had their driver's license. So why was I picking them up and dropping them off? Because I knew I had 5 minutes in the car, that they might be by themselves, that something would come up or created a potential for a conversation. And if we don't create those moments, they just don't happen. Because then you have influence and you can impact the conversation with them instead of, again, it just being a lecture or a to-do list.
Did you do your homework?
Or you never understood anything.
Yeah.
You're just, an old person.
You haven't cleaned your room
Yes.
this week.
It becomes very transactional. That's what our relationships become. And so I think the important part of, yes, knowing what's going on. Yes, knowing what's being done online. I'm like, I pay for the internet, so we know browsing history. And if we don't know browsing history, there won't be any. I don't know,
But if you're picking them up and you're spending that time, then chances are your kids will tell you, hey, I'm anxious. Should I get medicine for this?
Or they may not even say it that way,
Yeah.
but they'll mention that something's bothering them. And I think, again, an important thing as a parent is you can't be overreactive. I remember one time one of my sons came home and said something they did at school. My first thought was like, oh my God, like, why is this happening at school? But instead of going, what? I was like, oh, really? And I asked more questions because, it's amazing how we can shut down a conversation because we already have the answer or don't even give them a chance to express it. And I think that's so important that we learn how to express ourselves, but we're also part of that foundation of letting our children learn how to express themselves and have a conversation. And just like we want to be heard, they want to be heard. So you have to give that place for them to say what they're thinking and they're feeling without you saying, what? Why do you feel that way? That's not true. Well, it doesn't really matter what's true if it's my reality. Yeah. It's true for me. And so I think that's an important aspect in that parenting aspect of knowing what's going on in their lives and not just going, I'm the police officer, give me your detail of what was done today, but having a relationship that really, any relationship you have that's functioning and doing in a healthy place, you have conversation.
Yeah.
And things come up.
You build trust.
And you say how you feel, and you say what you don't like, and you're okay even if you say it and the other person didn't like it. You still come back together, but it comes out of a relationship. The other thing is, it's not too late. Because I think so many times we hear, oh, I should have done that, or I should have done this. I don't care if your kid's 35. It's not too late to start a dialogue with them. It doesn't all have to be probing questions, but just, hey, I just wanted to tell you I was thinking of you today, and I just wanted you to know I love you. Don't assume that you've missed the window. Listen, I talk to people all the time. I haven't talked to my children in years. They haven't spoken to me over this. But start with something. And don't do it expecting something back, because a lot of times, depending on how long it's been, they're not just going to go from 0 to 60 in 5 minutes. So it may take a while, but don't give up.
Again, the event that Family Community Church in North Highlands, California, that's in the Sacramento area, is hosting is To Save a Life. That's on April 18th, 7 p.m. Pacific time. It's a completely free event. You will receive free Narcan at the conclusion of the presentation to be given by Angela Webb from Arrive Alive. You can get informed, you can know how to talk to your kids, and this is a conversation that more churches need to be having, more communities need to be having, and more families certainly need to be talking about. Make sure to like and subscribe NewsNation's YouTube channel. We will have another episode next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. Go live for One Nation Under God. Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.